We welcome you tonight, Tuck. We proudly welcome Congressman Ron Paul to the program. One of the true political phenomena of this year, in terms of cash raising, in terms of enthusiasm, making news just in the last day or so, continues to. Also author of the new book, The Revolution, a manifesto by Ron Paul. Congressman, it's good of you to join us.
Thank you.
This has been an interesting year for you, to say the least. Are you surprised at the direction things have taken, the turns that have occurred along the way?
Actually, I am. I have to admit that because I had a goal, but I think we reached those goals that I set, and even more, because I knew what the odds were. A true revolution means you want to change the direction of the country, and I didn't know how many people would be listening. The reception by the young people was especially good, and a lot of people who have been thinking along these lines just have been very quiet. So I think the reception has been fantastic.
Change the key word. I mean, for the two political survivors on the Democratic side, for yourself, Senator McCain seems to embrace the word as well. Is it more than just a political buzzword? Do you detect a hunger in our society for change in all its manifestations larger than you expected it was going to be as well?
Well, and that wasn't a plan. We just don't like the status quo. We don't like the spending and the deficits, the foreign policy, the monetary policy. So we're talking about change. And I think others have picked up on this, and they use those words because the people are sick and tired of what they have. But when you look into the campaigns of the other candidates, I mean, what really are they going to change? Are they going to change foreign policy to non-intervention? Are they going to talk about a monetary system where the Federal Reserve doesn't print money out of thin air and set the price of loaning money, the interest rate? Are we going to challenge the status quo of this entitlement system? So if others talk about change, they ought to be asked specifically, what are you talking about?
Well, but there is such a sense that the status quo is just not where we want to be right now. But as you point out, there seems to be also that kind of pulling in opposite directions. Do we go to free markets, or do we go to more protectionism? Do we go to a non-interventionist policy, or do we increase, perhaps, and try to revert back to the kind of American projection of power that existed before it was some would argue denigrated through this adventure in Iraq?
And I think the conditions are demanding decisions to be made. And one point I make at the speeches is that the key question is, what should the role of government be? And I claim the founders asked that question. They had a revolution, and they wrote a document that said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty, not to run our lives, not to run the economy, not to police the world. And that question is being asked, again, out of necessity, because what we have isn't working. I think that's why people are looking for a change, and they're wondering about it. I think last week there was a statistic like 90% of the American people are frightened about what's happening in the economy. Young people especially, where I get the greatest amount of support, they know they're inheriting this system of debt. The national debt, the entitlement system that is unpayable. So they want answers, and of course I try very hard to provide some answers to that.
In your book, which does have the founders' handiwork on the cover here as well, your revolution, your manifesto, what do you mean by that?
It means that in many ways just to restore our Constitution. Unfortunately, that's a revolutionary idea. We all go to Washington. We all take an oath to obey the Constitution. It shouldn't be even negotiable. And yet today, if everybody followed the Constitution as they should, it would be revolutionary, because we wouldn't be policing the world. We would not be running up these deficits on a welfare state. The federal government wouldn't be running education. They wouldn't be mismanaging the medical care system. All the things that they have done, there's no place in the Constitution for our government to fix farm products, and on and on.
Yeah, the founders knew very early on, but they had to incur debt in order to keep this country running. In that wonderful book and series, John Adams, we saw him over there in the Netherlands taking on our first national debt, as it were. And they also knew that they had to find, as much as they wanted to stay away from foreign entanglements, they had to cut deals with the French and the English.
Yeah. So they were better at theory than they were at practice. Even Jefferson, who was our greatest theoretician, he had some infraction. But Jefferson also argued that he had wished they had put it into the Constitution that our government couldn't borrow. I would like to have seen that. But one thing that they did put into the Constitution is you couldn't print money out of thin air, because during that period of time, they did borrow, but they also destroyed their own currency. They destroyed the continental dollar, and they knew how dangerous that was because it impoverishes the people. And unfortunately, though, we've drifted so far from that, and it allows, because we don't address the monetary system, we allow our governments to spend money they don't have. They first tax, then they borrow, and they still don't have enough, and they say, well, let's just print it if we